Hello, my name is Harold Moret, Project Manager of the Copper Development Association, or CDA.
I'm Marcus Selmer, Vice President with the Copper Development Association. Welcome to another installment with the Do It Proper with Copper series. Today we're going to talk to you about the new consensus standard, ASTM B1029, a process and procedure standard for press connect fittings for plumbing, mechanical, and refrigeration applications. This new standard will cover the proper process and procedure for installing press fittings.
Now, press fittings been around for over 25 years in this country, but up to this point, we relied on the manufacturer's instructions on how to properly install. With this new standard, now it can be specified by an engineer. Now, as installers, we have to follow that standard.
This new process and procedure standard, ASTM B1029, will allow specifying engineers, contractors, and building owners to reference a consensus standard to ensure the proper installation of press connect fittings. Harold and I are now going to go through the proper process and procedure of ASTM B1029 in detail. The first step is measuring and cutting. For this instance, we're using 1 inch and need to measure out 10 inches. That 10 inches includes the end-to-end measurement that we need in this instance that covers the lay length of the copper fitting. The next step will be cutting. Different tools can be used to cut copper tube. In this instance, we're using a tube cutter, but a bandsaw or other methods are also acceptable. In the next step of this process and procedure, we're going to ream and deburr the end of the copper tube. Different tools can be used to accomplish this. A file, a pencil reamer, and a barrel reamer. Harold, go ahead and clean the end of the tube using one of the tools. So through this process, Harold is removing any burrs from the cut that we made. Our goal is to bring the inside of the tube and outside of the tube back to its original diameter. It is important to remove any sharp edges from burrs because we do not want to cut the gasket of the seal. The next step is to do a tactile inspection of the sealing surface on the copper tube. This means inspecting the sealing surface on the copper tube where the press connection will occur. You will want to inspect for dirt, debris, scratches, insize marking, any tape or stickers that are on the tube. All of this must be cleaned or removed from the sealing surface on the tube. Different ways to accomplish this could be with a Scotch-Brite pad, or using a sandcloth. And remember, if you're using a annealing tube, you must resize the tube to the correct roundness. Harold, can you walk us through some key points using a sizing tool?
Yeah, so a sizing tool is very important. A anneal tube or a coil or soft tube is not round. So we have to re-round it because we have a perfectly round fitting, but we don't have a perfectly round anneal soft tube. So in order to do that, you have to also end prep it, put the inside barrel in there, the mandrel, and the mandrel is going to resize that. You put that in, and you should be able to rotate it freely. Once you do that, you have achieved perfect roundness on it. Now your fitting will fit. Now after we end prep the end of the tube, we want to do a quick inspection of our fitting. Make sure that the fitting hasn't been dented or the O-rings are missing. So make sure you do a quick inspection of them. Now keep in mind, there are different applications that you could check with the manufacturers, like for refrigeration, gas, or water. Make sure you use the right gasket and the right fitting for the correct application.
In this next step of assembling the support, we're going to focus on the proper marking on the copper tube for inserting into the fitting. First, we want to make sure that we use the proper cup depth. Different manufacturers have different lay lengths and cup depths, so it is important to follow this step. With it, we're using 1 inch copper tube, And with this manufacturer, we're measuring out a full cup depth. Once that is complete, we can insert the fitting. Notice that the fitting covered up the mark on the tube. This happens. In the standard, it requires you now to mark the tube at the end of the cup. This is ensuring two important things. The first mark is ensuring that we have the tube pushed all the way into the fitting to the back of the cup. The second mark also now ensures that the fitting has not moved during the installation process. It is very important to follow these process and procedures for marking the tube. This ASTM process procedure ensures that the tube is inserted all the way to the back of the cup, and then mark it again to ensure that the fitting still has proper placement on the tube. The next step is making a press connection. Now that our fitting is ready to be prepped, we want to make sure that we have the correct jaws with the fitting. For refrigeration applications, various manufacturers have different jaws for their fittings. It is important to make sure the correct jaw is matched with the correct fitting. Now that our fitting and tube have been prepped, we're ready for it to be pressed.
Okay, so make sure you use the right designated size for the right fitting. You're going to open the jaws, align it, make sure it's not disaligned, and just make sure it's inserted properly. Be sure, for safety reasons, never put your hands around the jaw. You're ready to press, and we'll do that now. That joint is pressed.
The last step of the standard is testing. Some manufacturers have a leak detection feature in their press fitting. This allows you to run a low pressure, air, or water test through the system and identify unpressed joints. You can do this before you pressurize the system to full pressure for testing. For proper procedure for low pressure leak detection, follow the manufacturer's recommendation. Harold, that brings us to a conclusion of the ASTM B1029 process procedure for press connect fittings.
This standard provides best practices when connecting press connect joints. For more information, go to copper.org. Thank you for watching.